because it's so fascinating, I want to talk about idols a little bit more. Okay, so we really got the message last week that Paul was saying when you were foreigners to the things of God, you were carried away unto these dumb idols. Most people that read that will say, well, the people of this time, I guess they were into idolatry.
Oh.
But we're not.
Yeah.
Okay? When you're just a part of the world, before you knew what you know now, did you have ideas about God?
Yes.
Sure you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody does, right?
Sure.
And even the ones that are against God, they'll come to you and say, if God is like this, why does he allow this? All right? Now, this is what they don't want to admit. That's idolatry, right there. Because you're making an image of God, and you're saying he is like this. Okay? Now, here's the problem. When people become Christians, they bring that idol with them.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Because they're still arguing the same things as when they were unbelievers. They're saying, if God is in control of everything, why does this happen? Why doesn't he stop that? And so on. See, it's the wrong image of God. And I believe that sovereignty is birthed out of that whole thinking. So sovereignty, the reason I'm so against it, is because the concept of God involved in that teaching is totally unlike Christ.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We need to use Christ as our foundation, because if we go beyond that, then we've just created a God out of our own hands. With our own hands.
Right. I know you and I know what hands mean, but let's say if we wanted to teach someone that they have a funny idea about God, just say, man, all the time, manufactures a concept of God out of their own mind, their own imaginations. And you hear it from unbelievers, like total sinners, will say, if God is the God that created everything and is controlling everything, why does he allow this? Why does he allow that? I'm saying that we as Christians have come into Christianity and we dragged that idol in with us. And we're not looking at Christ to see the character of God. We're keeping those thoughts that we had before we were believers.
Well, because you're not being trained out of them. Become a Christian, you come into church, and they're not training you out of that thinking.
No, they're not. They're actually reinforcing it, aren't they?
Yes, yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah, yeah. They just reinforce it, so why would you come out of it if you've got these people reinforcing what you believe? Because the church is no different than the world.
The concept of sovereignty is really anti-Jesus again, because you're not understanding that Jesus showed you the full revelation of God, his character, what he does, how he works. And the other issue that I saw in the last video as I edited it was we don't seem to understand covenant when we talk about God. We only seem to be able to talk about the word control when we talk about God. See, covenant is not control.
No, it's relationship.
It's relationship. Two people working together is the concept of a covenant. It's not about one person in the covenant being more powerful, controlling the second person in the covenant. So, when I bring up the word covenant, you know the arguments that I get back? I've shared some of them with you. People will write me back and say, well, I'm not aware of which covenant you're talking about. Because they're thinking, right, that it is a particular covenant with Noah, and then there was another covenant with Abraham. There's another covenant made with us through Christ. No, you're not understanding. Covenant is God's nature.
Yes, it's a very simple covenant. I will be your God and you will be my people.
Very simple.
Very simple.
I will be your God and you will be my people. That is simple.
It's simple. It's too simple.
It's too simple. That's when people's brains scream.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that God is not like that. He's not on a power trip. It's not about God being in control and we are the pawns in his game. The cosmic chessboard
Yes.
again. God's just moving the pieces and we're the pieces. No, I do not see that in covenant. Remember what I told you about what they do? Is they make their God first. And I've always done this, and I don't know why I always say it like this. God, they make their God first, okay? And then they take Jesus and they try to fit him into this concept of God. That's why when they say Jesus is God, they're saying that actually Jesus is like the God we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're making Jesus even, he's almost like Jesus is hiding his true nature.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't fit in God's shape mold. God fits in the Jesus shape mold.
Right. That's the way God planned
That's
it.
the way
Sure.
God planned it, yes.
Because that's the only way man could see who God was, by looking at a man.
Right, because God has always spoken through man.
Yes.
He spoke through Noah. He spoke through Moses. He spoke through Abraham. He spoke through all the prophets. And then he spoke through Jesus.
Yes.
And then Jesus appointed apostles and God spoke through them. We don't seem to understand that. Ted, you're trying to put across this concept of covenant. The whole idea of gifts, that God gives gifts unto men. And those gifts are already there in the Old Testament. They're not different in the New.
Yeah.
We have the prophets. We have the leaders. Noah, Moses, David, and we could name them all. All the good kings, all the prophets.
How many examples do we need?
I know.
Right? I mean, come on, people.
Yeah, but you see, yes, but we don't seem to make the connection of the things of the Spirit being the same as the things of the prophets, the way they spoke.
That's why they kept going into captivity, because they didn't get the...
They wouldn't listen.
They wouldn't listen.
Basically, in the Old Testament, we have two concepts of God. The God of covenant, the real God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then you have Baal, right? And we've talked about this before. Then sometimes when people read the book of Revelation, the reason they don't understand why the doctrine of Balaam comes up and the doctrine of Jezebel comes up, because they're thinking, well, this is a new thing, because they're all taught that the book of Revelation is a new thing. But you see, the doctrine of Jezebel is an old thing. It's an Old Testament thing that carries into the church. See, the worshippers of Baal, which are the doctrines of Balaam and the doctrines of Jezebel, are in the churches,
Yeah.
the 7 churches. Remember, the 7 represents the whole. So, Baal really is the god of control and hard consequences. That's where you see the concept of sacrificing children, because Baal means master. Okay, remember in Hosea, God said, don't call me Baal, call me Ishi, because there's a huge difference. Baal is a master idol. Now, the idol itself has no power, none. But you see, the prophets of Baal have the power. Well, I would say the same thing today. If we have a false concept of God, the image itself, the idol, doesn't have any power. It can't breathe. It can't talk. It doesn't have real eyes and real ears. And it has to be carried around by men. Okay? Why is this idol speaking to us? It speaks to us through the prophets of Baal. The idol's not talking at all. Only the representatives of the idol.
Yeah, because the idol can't speak because it has no mouth.
Right. It's carved out by the hands of man, by
Yeah.
craftsmen, and covered with gold and so on.
Yeah.
But you still have to carry it around. And I'm saying this. If we don't have a true image of God based on Christ as the revelation of God, then we too have an idol we carry around, and we are being told what to do by that idol, not the idol itself, but the prophets of that idol. Now you understand when Peter said there were false prophets among the people, as there shall be false teachers among you, because they do the same thing. The false teaching supports that false concept of God. This is why the revelation of Christ is so important. Because if your concept of God is not based on Christ, it is idolatry. And this is the part we don't want to admit. No, I'm just a sinner. I'm just out here. Even when I was involved in the world and not interested in God, no, you had concepts of God. You said those things, those accusations against God. So you, therefore, were just like what Paul said. You were foreigners to the things of God, carried away unto these dumb idols.
I always think about what John said in 1 John 5:21. He says, what's the last verse he says?
The very last thing.
Yeah, keep yourself from idols.
Yes. And we're reading Bible times, we're thinking, oh, they must have idolatry. Because we're thinking today, in our modern technology, right, we don't have idols. Do you have false concepts of God? It is idolatry. It doesn't matter what you call it. This is the part that mankind, including the church, cannot admit. If your God is not like Christ, it is idolatry.
It's so straightforward because over and over again, the prophets talked about idols. The true prophets.
The true prophets.
Right?
Yeah. And the apostles.
And the apostles, yes.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, that remember it talks about it has no temptation taken you that is such as common to man.
Yeah.
But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted above that you're able, and you will able to bear it. Therefore, verse 14, my beloved, flee from idolatry. Okay, do you know how hard it is for the modern person to read this? And they're thinking, no, idolatry is not the temptation. They're thinking, my sin is my temptation. Or hardships in my life are my temptation. No, you're facing exactly the same temptation as the Corinthians. It's just that we're too proud to admit. We live in modern times. We think we don't have idolatry. But we do, because we have mental concepts of who we think God is. And this is the sad thing that I see. Now we have dragged that idol, that idolatry, into the church, and we actually believe that we have now doctrines that support that concept of God. And where in the world did we get that concept of God in the first place? From the world. And then we get offended if someone says, well, that view of God is antichrist. Oh, just the very topic of idolatry, they're upset. They're saying to themselves, no, we live in the 21st century. We don't have idolatry. But I'm saying, listen, if you don't understand the revelation of God through his Son, then you believe something about God that is false, which is idolatry. It's that simple to me.
Now we go right back to the first commandment. What does it say?
The first commandment, yeah. I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. You will have no other gods before me. And we're thinking, well, that whole verse doesn't apply to me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't taken out of Egypt. Oh, you haven't studied very much then.
No.
Because Egypt represents the flesh.
The world, yes.
What were you going to say, Lori?
The world.
The world.
You've been
Yes.
taken out of the world.
You've been brought out.
Yeah.
No, here's the problem. In our doctrines, really, we have dragged Egypt in with us.
You brought the leeks and the onions. with
Yeah,
us.
we desire to go back.
Well, and that's what they did.
Yes.
That's what they wanted to do.
They wanted to go back.
They received the manna from heaven. They got tired of that, and they wanted to go back into.
Oh, I see it all the time too in people. Like if you talk about the word, they'll say, no. I want to talk about something else. Let's go back to Egypt. It was more fun.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this manna. No, this whole subject of idolatry it's fascinating to me. I'm thinking most people in this world, when they become Christians, don't believe that they were involved in idolatry because they brought the same beliefs with them. And now their teachers are reinforcing that idea of God and calling it sovereignty.